Hello, professionals. Behind every great career, there is a story. And today on the network, we are going inside one. Our very distinguished guest for today is an expert in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, FMCG. She currently serves as a food safety manager in that capacity. And this very guest is no other than Mavis Ene. Hi, Mavis.
Hi, Opara. Thank
Good
you so much for
afternoon.
having me. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for honoring us,
Thank
for
you so
honoring
much.
our invitation. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you look pretty too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
so for the people meeting you for the very first time,
Okay.
how would you describe yourself more than just your job title? We just introduced you as a food safety manager in the FMCG industry. But beyond that title in itself, we want to know you before we get an insight into what your career has been like and what the story behind it is. So if you're describing yourself to someone for the first time, beyond the work that you do, how would you describe yourself?
I would say I'm someone who, loves to have fun.
Okay.
And fun in a way has helped me to distress or to remove the stress from, day-to-day activities. So movies is my go-to kind of fun. You would always see me in the cinema. You see me watching a lot of movies, a little bit of swimming, sports. I don't play football, but I like swimming. So I would also do some swimming just to, keep fit. If I'm not in the gym, like if I can't find myself in the gym, you will always find me in the swimming pool. Um, Also, learning new things, a little bit of travel, just to travel, go to different places and meet with people, learn about their culture, learn about their food, just doing things, in summary, doing things that is fun, doing fun things and enjoying yourself while at it and learning things, different culture. You could learn it. I could also learn a lot of things from movies as well. So in a nutshell, that's just me.
I really think you're a fan of movies because you mentioned movies a few times. What kind of movies do you watch?
Oh, I watch uh, action movies, a little bit of romance,
Oh,
a little bit of horror movies too.
yeah.
Yeah, so those are my top three movies you will see me watching. A little bit of high school, but more top three would be horror, action, sci-fi, and then romance. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so now we're coming back to career. We already have an insight into who you are as a person. You like to have fun. You like to do things that helps you to distress. But now we're going into the career. Like you said earlier, the network is all about getting insight into people's stories, especially people that are in specific industries. A lot of people that don't understand what the FMCG industry is all about. And I just want you to give us your own perspective on what the FMCG is all about in general and probably narrowed down to what you do as a person.
Okay, for FMCG, you have two main categories. Businesses or manufacturing sectors that are into food and beverage, and then you have the cosmetic part of it. So food and beverage could be, dairy, could be dairy drinks, milk drinks, it could be cereals, it could be ingredients for food, tomato paste, it could also be herbs like pharmaceuticals. So they are classified as food as long as it's something that is going to be consumed by the consumers. And then the other sector, skincare, what you apply for your skin, and all that. But for me, my role is more centered into the food and beverage category. Okay, and this is even more sensitive. This is like the more sensitive part, manufacturing part of FMCG, because it's more about taking concern about what people put in, the kind of food that people put in their body system. Okay, so my role is centered as a food safety manager. My role is centered around making sure that the controls are in place and making sure that the food that we are producing, as it goes out there, it is in a safe form, it is in a healthy form, it is free and void of any, hazards, as we'll call it, or contamination, so that when the consumers have access to this food and take them,
Yeah.
they don't have any illnesses or injury or harm as a result of consuming food from this manufacturing
Okay,
plant.
that was very insightful. Thank you very much. That's something to pick. So my next question is going to be, what exactly fueled the passion for, this line of work? Was this something that you decided you were going to do at the long run, probably in the course of life, or it was always what you knew that you were going to do moving forward?
I think that's a very good question. From the very beginning, I wanted to be a medical doctor.
Whoa,
So,
okay.
I was one of those kids that will wake up and they'll ask, what do you want to be? I wanted to be a medical doctor because it was so much fun seeing people on a white, kind of lab coats, and then they'll have the stethoscope, and then the person walks with pride. And I had that vision too, that I want to look like this person because I saw someone who looked so good in that kind of setup. I said, why can't I be? And so I would always tell my father, I want to study medicine and surgery. Okay. I did the first jam and jam bounced me, and then that was when I got to know that, okay, that field is a very competitive field, especially in Nigeria. Okay. And then, I did jam. I wasn't getting the cutoff. I said, no, I cannot keep, staying 1 year extra year at home. Let me see what other options I could explore. And then I read, I went through the list of all the other applicable science courses that could also, fit into medical field line. Okay, there was a pharmaceutical line, and then there was the microbiology part, there was biochemistry. And I said, okay, I think microbiology is something I can do. And then if later in my lifetime I could also use that basis to also still go ahead and further in my quest for attaining a certificate or BSc in the medical field. Okay, so I studied microbiology against medicine and surgery. And then I found it pretty much interesting. Okay. People in my set in my class were going nuts because we had to learn about microorganisms and the way they are crucial in food, in water, in the environment, how crucial they are to human beings as a whole. And then it was from there I began to pick interest in microbes. I said, okay, microorganisms are things that we can't see, with our naked eyes, but they have the power to bring an elephant down. So these organisms are special, and that was where the interest picked up. So when I came out from school, did my NYSA, and then I was, applying for interviews and jobs. And then luckily I got, an interview for, a laboratory for as a quality control officer at first. And then I read about the role. Okay, quality control officer has a whole lot to do in managing the controls that are in place to ensure that the products that we churn out there to our consumers are okay. And I said, okay, how do I apply this into the field, microbiology? It was interesting because even when I got the job, I started as a microbiologist in the lab. So it was spot on that I was able to, get first-hand experience, doing the job with the knowledge I obtained from the university. So in a nutshell, it didn't just, it was something I grew to love. I wanted to go into the med-surg field. And then when I started working, I did a course in microbiology. I saw that there are other fields that people are not talking so much about. Everybody's concerned about medicine and surgery. There are fields and there are people who are making who have careers as a result of this field. And that is where you talk about FMCG, because in FMCG, you can apply your microbiology knowledge, you can apply public health, you can apply biochemistry, you can apply chemistry, depending on the sectors, the areas in which you are working in the manufacturing plant. For microbiology, it's crucial for food safety. You need to ensure that there are controls in place for biological hazards to ensure that your food is not contaminated. You won't have issue of foodborne illnesses in the market when your food is out there. You understand? So that's in a nutshell, like a summary of how
Yeah.
I entered the field deviating from med-surg and studying microbiology.
Thank you very, very much. If I had this knowledge that you just shared and probably went for something still in that line, because you know, as with microbiology, you still get to like, you know,
And the
cool.
and the fun part of it is because I love lab coats. You know, as a microbiologist, I wear lab coats, so it's still fulfilling some of the childhood goals I wanted to have. I kid you not, med surg is a big field entirely, and you need people who have the strong will and strength to be able to go that. Microbiology too is not something small, but you also need to have that interest to do it. Okay, if you don't have the interest, you get so lost. So it comes from what the individual wants as a career. So I feel if you felt like you couldn't do sciences, it's not a big deal, you know, as you'd channel your part into another course or another field. Because I've seen people who started with sciences and even deviated, you know, to altogether. Some are marketing managers, some are entered the engineering field after doing 5 years course of science, and they realized that it was not for them. So I think it also stems from the person's individual goals, what the person wants. If you don't love what you're doing, then there's no point doing it because you won't enjoy it. You won't enjoy the career. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Like I said, I'm learning. I hope you're learning too. So, you talked about passion, and me of all people, I understand how much, you know, passion can fuel your desire. Is that the right word? How it can impact what you get to do. But I want you to explain more on how, despite the fact that passion exists, there can still be some times where you struggle with that decision. Because many people believe that, oh, if I really love this, then why do I feel like I made the wrong decision, or why am I struggling? Did you ever get to that point? And if you did, what are the things that you did that got you, you know, away from it and focused on what exactly you are going for? And what would be your advice to anybody that is also going through the same thing and just wants to know, is there something wrong for me to be feeling like this?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the dynamics of FMCG is very complex, especially in the food and the beverage sector. So, of course, in my career journey, I struggled, and but I found a way to navigate some of the struggles I have. You know, in FMCG, the first point that a person needs to understand is that you would have to be thrown out there to different rapid changes, okay? Especially because you're also dealing, as an FMCG sector, you will be dealing with a lot of other statutory or regulatory authorities who are your stakeholders, of course. So there will be rapid changes. For today, you can have a standard or a regulation saying so. And maybe in the next 1 year or in the next 2 years, you have the standard changing. So number one, first thing is the adaptability of the person. How fast or how swift are you as an individual employee in that sector able to adapt to rapid changes that comes even from the, it could be from internal changes from the sector you're working in. It could also be from external changes from external stakeholders like NAFDAC, like SON, like customs, who have impact in the FMCG, you know, sector. So adaptability is one thing. You know, the passion is there, but are you agile enough to adapt to the swift changes that comes with this sector? That is one thing that I had to learn, that there's a lot of change that will come, and you have to be strong enough, or you have to also flow with those changes so that you are not left out. When you are left out and you are not in tune with what is current, then you begin to struggle. Second thing I have learned over the years is to be self-aware. You need to be self-aware of your strengths and of your weaknesses. If you are self-aware of what you're able to do so well, and where you are weak, I believe that is a start to, you know, enabling you to be able to manage your space in the career, in the sector you are working in. For example, if I have a strength in something, I will do it so well. If I am weak in something, what I learned over the years is to look for a colleague or look for someone who has a strength in what I am weak in, and leverage on that person's strength. Collaborate more with the person so that that person shields my weakness in the line of the job. Okay, so that's the second thing over the years that I have learned. Third thing is empathy, of course. You need to have empathy, with people that you work around. You also need to collaborate with people. Nobody is an island of its own. You need to collaborate with people because these are people that will help you to achieve the same goal that you want to achieve in that sector. Okay, so if there is enough collaboration with empathy, I think that is also one of the things I've learned over the years to break that struggle in the FMCG sector. Okay, and then I think the last one for me is to know your job. Know when you have a job description of what role you are doing in that space, you need to understand your job description very well. What are you supposed to deliver? What are the key things that your role entails that you're supposed to deliver? And then read about your job role. If you don't read or if you don't understand your job role properly, you will not be able to even convince yourself to do the job. And then if you can't convince yourself, how do you want to convince others who would be engaging you in the same field? Okay, so the FMCG is a fast dynamic, it's fast paced. Today you can have a standard, tomorrow something is changing. There are lots of authorizations and regulations that could change overnight. You understand? And over the years, I have learned, these key things that I have talked about in helping me manage myself. Also, mental health is also important, okay? So that you don't burn out. When you are feeling overwhelmed, talk to someone, get a shrink. You could have somebody that you could talk to in the sector, or you could get a psychologist who you could talk about what you're feeling, because mental health is important. If you don't find ways to distress, if you don't find ways to lose steam, imagine it's like you're having too much steam or pressure in a container and you have not let it out. You would blow up and you will burn down and you burn out. So find ways. It's not easy. Maybe because of the work-life balance, we still struggle with that part in the FMCG sector. But find ways. I tell people that I collaborate with, or even my downliners, to find ways to lose steam. Okay, and that's why at the beginning of earlier when you asked me about to introduce myself, I talked about things that I do for fun. These are ways I lose steam. Like I could get home from a very tired meeting, and instead of thinking about it, I just put on a very nice movie and I'm laughing, like it maybe sitcom or a comedy. Or I could just go and swim and forget about, all the stress from work. It's a way of, distressing and removing, letting loose of the steam, so that you would be in a good mental capacity to be able to handle the pressure from that sector. Thank you.
That's very, very important, and that's very, very insightful. And to be very honest, I got the answer to my next question. Okay, maybe not in its entirety, but I got like one of the answers. Because my next question was going to be, what are some of the skills? Remember, we're just talking to young minds, people that are coming into maybe the sciences, whatever thing it might be, for the first time, and some of the things that they would like to know. And my next question was going to be about skills that you need to acquire, things that you need to know how to do, and of whichever thing you're going to mention. One thing I picked from what you said already before, one skill I picked is adaptability, because I understand when you said that things change, and since change is something that is constant, it will keep happening. The change is not going to, even if the change meets you at the same point that you are, it's not going to leave you at that same point. So you have to learn. So one thing I got from what you said is skill that everybody, I think for people coming into the FMCG or even anything in general, the ability to adapt to the different changes that would come in your line of work is very, very important. Another thing that I would want to have an insight to, that I would want us to have an insight to, is what are some of the failures, setbacks that you've encountered on the way? Because I would say this even for people that, are coming into the industry and those that are not in the industry, as a matter of fact. A lot of people have different misconceptions.
Yeah.
I used to say that if you're not in a particular field, you think that, oh, your field has it, the best or the worst, and everybody gets to debate and argue that, oh, we have it bad or we have it worse. But getting it from, a one-on-one perspective, what some of the failures and the setbacks that you've had during all of this, your years of experience in this field.
Okay. So first one for for food and beverage sector. First setback a business would have in that sector is if you don't put quality at the center of everything you do.
Okay.
Okay. If you compromise on quality, you would have issues. What I mean, and quality and food safety in this sense. If you compromise on quality, it means that you're not putting the adequate controls in place to ensure that your consumer is getting, the right product for this, the right product that they have paid for. Because at the end of the day, FMCG is existing because of the consumers. It's existing because we want to give people the right product that they want. So when you don't put quality at the center and food safety at the center of everything that you do, especially with food, that are very, very, very foods like milk, dairy, yogurt, that is very sensitive, it's one of the biggest way to go downhill, because you will have complaints, you could have visits from regulatory authorizations like NAFDAC, SON. They could shut the business down. It could affect the brand. It could affect that product brand. It could affect the business as a whole. So one of the major things I've seen is when people when people compromise on quality. Okay. Other things I have seen as well that could also be issues are um, in my line of work, we call it defense, food defense. When you don't protect the consumers and you don't protect the food from intentional harm or sabotage, that's another thing I've seen. Food fraud. You see cases where people are complaining that they churn out products out there, and then people will go through the back door, get their materials, and put out fake products in that same brand name. So if you don't have a system to control fraud, especially food fraud in this sector, it is also a big way of, causing a major setback, for the company itself. Okay, and then what I've seen also that could also be a setback is when there are no sustainable actions or there should be a goal. What do we want to achieve? This product that we want to churn out there, what do we want to achieve with this product? And then when that goal is set, there should be sustainable actions to ensure that what we have said we are going to do, that's the goal that has been set, is followed through. So if there are actions but they are not sustained, there will always be problems in in the sector. But the biggest challenge is finding a lasting solution, a strong solution to those problems. So correction, how do you correct some of those problems? What are the actions that you put in place to ensure that those problems don't repeat itself again? You understand? So it's very deep. It's very broad. There are so many things, but I just want to highlight on these three major ones. Because there's so many things that could be setback. Also, the context of the country. It's not easy to run a business in the country. It is not. There's inflation rate, there is power problem. Nigeria as a whole, when you don't have steady power supply, especially for FMCG factories or the manufacturing plant, maybe a manufacturing plant that is into cold products or products that need some sort of preservation, you need power to do that, energy to do that. And in a sector like in a country like Africa or Nigeria as a whole now, where you have power struggles, it could also affect the business. Inflation rates is not to be overemphasized. okay, because you will always have struggles between price fluctuation based on the FX rate or inflation rate in the company. So there are a lot of things. Some things too is some problems could also sit around collaborating. If you don't collaborate with your stakeholders, the regulatory people, it's not going to work. So there's a whole lot, but I think in a nutshell, these are just one of the key ones that I have seen that are major setbacks for some FMCG companies in Nigeria.
Okay, okay. Thank you very, very much. So now we'll go into your own story.
Ah,
Because the
okay.
network stories is about people's personal stories. And we
Okay.
want people to just get insights from your own life and, how you started from, what they call the grassroots and everything up until this point. Things that, how you handled rejection, disappointment, how
Yeah.
you came into, growing and climbing up the ladder of,
Yeah.
career growth and development.
Yeah.
Just you in general. We just want to know what your story has been as
Yeah.
somebody in the FMCG. For somebody also looking at, I want to go into this field, but I do. There are many people that they have idea of what they want to do, the industry they want to go into, but they don't really know what to expect, and there's little to nothing that Google can answer to you. It's more like generic. But when you have someone tell you of their own personal experiences, it gives people insights, real life insights into, oh, okay, I am to expect this, and this is how I should handle this. So we want to learn from your own personal story, not just, oh, this is how things are supposed to be done, or this is how you should handle things. We want to know how you handled it, how you handled rejection, how you got to where you are, the things that you think people took seriously that didn't really matter, or some things that if you had not handled would not have gotten you to this point. So basically your own story when it comes to starting from where you started from up till this point where you are in your career.
Okay, this is a very interesting question because over the years for me, currently on my role as a food safety manager, it wasn't. It took me quite a number of years to get to where I am. So initially, I started as a microbiologist, just at the bottom of the organogram or chain, and then I was doing normal analysis, go to the line, pick products, analyze, send results, and I noticed that at that point, you are not seen. There's no visibility to what the analyst is doing.
But is that peculiar to you, or even in general? It's not really, you think it's not a role where you get a lot of visibility?
I think then because we're in the quality control setup,
Okay.
and now based on moving dynamics, most businesses, or in fact FMCG, they are moving into quality assurance or management. So nobody's really talking about the quality control part anymore. People don't want problems to happen in the food chain. They want to prevent those problems from happening. So the quality control setup was you're waiting for a problem to happen so that you can catch it.
Okay.
And then the dynamics is you don't need to wait for a problem to happen. You need to prevent those problems from happening so that when the person is checking at the end of the day, he's ascertaining that your system is okay. So yeah, so for me, in the lab we're doing all the work, but the visibility was not there. You don't get to sit in meetings with top people. It is your work that will be projected by someone else that will take the benefit for it. So yeah, so in my mind I was like, okay, I needed to learn the basics of on the job, but I don't want to be on this role for so long. And then I started reading. In fact, the then boss I had encouraged me and said, you need to read more. If you want to aspire more, you need to read more. And then I started reading. I started requirements, the regulatory requirements for each product. And then as God will have it, there was the then regulatory and food safety officer was going on maternity leave. So the big question was who's going to, relieve her when she's gone. And then the opportunity presented itself. I was nominated to sit on that position for the time being that she would be on the mat leave. Yeah. And so I had this fear. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a role that, I've not done before. How am I going to manage it? She's going to be away for 6 months, 6 to 9 months thereabouts,
Yeah.
as long as possible. And how am I going to manage this role? Am I going to be able to fit into this role? Am I going to be able to do this role in our absence without issues? So I started reading a whole lot. We did the normal routine handovers. Let's go to the regulatory people and all that. And then she left. And then I assumed the role. My darling, it was Shege Banza Pro Max because I was used to being in the micro lab where there is no visibility. You're just there in the lab doing your analysis and all that. And now you are thrown out in the open. Okay, as a regulatory and food safety officer, it means I have to now start having engagements coming out of that closed door. I need to start going to the regulatory office, the NAFDAC office, having engagements with some very difficult people. You could go to the office and see somebody that is not smiling, and your goal is to try and make the person smile and engage the person to get what you want or get the feedback that you need. So it was where I discovered that I needed to work a whole lot on communication. Because communication was going to play a big role, especially in this new role that I was currently put on. And then what I would do, I would just, at home, I would practice in front of the mirror. I would like, you mirror, you're going to be the NAVDAC, DG, whatever. And I'm going to be this person that doesn't know anybody that walks into the office. So I was practicing. How am I going to talk? How do I speak? How do I read the room? How do I understand the person's mood? What are the choice of words I would use when engaging this person? So it was on this role, I started relearning a lot of things. Big thing on it was communication. I started reading the requirements so that I was already equipped with the knowledge when I was going to, have engagements with these people, especially with respect to registration and all. So fast forward to that. After honing the role, I stayed on that role for so long. At some point, I was feeling disappointed. Like, okay,
she came back.
No. Okay, so she didn't even come back. Oh. So she didn't come back. She absconded. So she absconded. Like she didn't even, so it was later I knew that she was not going to come back. And then I was like, God damn it. I am now stuck in this role. Is it that because my mindset was I was going to be there and leave. Yeah. But now I'm stuck here. Because you understand, I'm stuck here. Is it that I leave and go back or I put in for this role and stay? Okay. So it was either that or that. I said, look, I've always wanted to move. Yeah. I've always wanted to come out of that cocoon. So why would I be scared? And then they had to throw in an interview for this role, for a role that I was just put there in the meantime. So I now had to defend myself again to get the official appointment for that role amongst other colleagues. It was something else because the whole concentration during the interview was on me. You have been doing this role. Yeah. So the questions they will ask other colleagues or other aspirants will not be the same as the question they will ask me. Yeah. And so I nailed the interview and then I was given an official letter to be the regulatory and food safety officer at that time in my career. Okay, so then I started getting faced with a lot of different things that I didn't know when I was in the micro lab. Okay. Number one is managing people. How do you manage difficult people? Like the regulatory officers. You go to NAFDAC office, especially that one in Isolo. You go there, you will stand. There were no seats. You will stand and they will call you in and then you come in, you meet one woman that is already looking so angry and like, yes, what do you want? And in your mind, you're like, how do I communicate with this woman and manage her so she doesn't walk me out of the office? And I have to possible. And I have to also give results. I have to deliver. Because I'm going there to get an application approved. So I have to also I can't go back to the factory to say or the plant to say I didn't get what I want. Okay, so it was interesting. I had to relearn a lot of things and communication was the biggest one I had to learn. And then reading the requirements and the standards so that you're already equipped with the knowledge when you go there. Yes, I know this is the requirement. This is it. We've done this. It makes the discussion easier. Okay. So I was on that role for a good 4 years. Whoa. Longer than how long I was as a microbiologist. And I was like, good Lord. And I will see opportunities coming and then they'll tell you, no, you were not recommended. Okay, some other people were recommended. I will see people coming from outside. I will still be the one to teach these people. So it was discouraging at some point, but I told myself, look, I want to equip myself with the right knowledge, the right skills, the right experience, so that when that opportunity presents itself, I get it.
Yeah.
I am not fidgeting and I am not shaking. Okay, so I had to, and that was how I was able to learn things about the requirements. I was exposed to collaborating with the regulatory people. I had to also lead to be able to be responsible for managing their visits when they come to the factory, manage people and all that. So I learned that in this space of 4 years that I was in this regulatory and food safety officer role. And then after that, another thing I would like to talk about is what people won't teach you, you have to learn is that sometimes you need to manage people too.
Yeah.
Bosses. So I had a boss that in my own context was very difficult. I did not understand why I felt like the boss was picking on me.
Oh.
And then I would burn out, I would be emotional, I'll be like, why all this and all that? So I had to relearn some things. The expectation is that, oh, you're a boss, you're supposed to manage me. But I had to learn that you can also manage your boss.
Yeah.
And so that was what I was learning. Okay, how do I now manage this person? You understand? So that it doesn't affect me. Okay. So there were a lot of things I learned in these 4 years. And then disappointment again, sometimes you would see you feel like, okay, why am I not getting recommended? Why am I not being put there? There are a lot of politics or dynamics to it. You understand? So there was a opening for a role, and that was this is my current role, food safety manager role, and I was the food safety officer at the time, and there was an opening, and they had thrown the role outside, and I was like, what is this? Is it that I am not equipped or I'm not proven that I am capable of doing this role? Okay. And then they threw the interview, they brought in, a food safety manager. At that point, I was like, do I resign? Do I leave? What is all this? Am I, why am I here? Why am I not being seen? Why do they have to throw this role outside? But what I learned was that, see, everything happens for a reason. And there is always a time for, there's always an opportunity that will present itself. You just need to ensure that you are ready when that opportunity comes. So the food safety manager came in, very fantastic individual, nice person, bonded, we did the work together, we were collaborating and all that. And it was interesting because what I did was I didn't want my goal or aspiration to get this role affect the fact that I would give my best on my current role and support the person that was coming. So we worked together. I was collaborative, fantastic human being, fantastic individual. And then he had to leave at some point, and then that same opportunity again represented itself. And I sat down, I was like, okay, this one is, I'm not going to push for it, I'm not going to fight for it. I think I have worked on myself over the years to position myself in a place where I'm being seen, and ensure that when I am in a very strategic meetings or very top-notch meetings, you give the best representation of yourself. You communicate well, and people can be very funny when they want to engage you. Some people are engaging you because they want to know what content you have. They want to know if you know something. They're testing you, and I can tell you, like, the first 2 to 3 minutes you open your mouth to say some things, you've already given an impression of yourself to the other person. So in most cases, I try as much as possible to give the best representation of myself, talk and then know my onions very well. When we're talking about things on the current job role, be able to contribute significantly. Okay, so opportunity presented itself, and funny enough, I was promoted to the role. I didn't have to do an interview for it because I had worked
Done
so
the
hard
work.
and I had proven myself. And the recruiter, the person who recommended me for the role, saw the content that I could, bring on the role. And that was how I was able to get my current role as a food safety manager. So far, it has been interesting. Um, I had this fear that maybe I was going to it was going to be challenging. It is challenging now because you have to lead people. You have to ensure that you are managing people and you have to be accountable for people's actions. You have to push for results, which is a different dynamics from what I was used to. But I think the 4 years and the years that I have spent so long in honing or harnessing some skills is what is really helping me so far in the current job role that I am in. So that is just a little bit of my background story to where I am now currently in my career.
Thank you so much. If you've been following, I'm just going to say some of the things that I learned from what you said. And one thing that is very, very important that many people don't take cognizance of is the fact that you have to build yourself while you are still where you are for where you want to be. Remember how you said someone mentioned to you that since this is what you want, you have to
And
lead. I have a last question before we're done with this segment, and the question is going to have to be your advice for people that are feeling discouraged.
okay.
Many a times I don't know exactly how many years you spent in the lab as an analyst like you mentioned, and probably there are people that are staying very, very long in that particular position, that doesn't really have so much visibility, and they are looking at it that should I just leave altogether, should I just quit what I am doing and focus on other things? What would be your advice to them?
Oh, my advice, they shouldn't feel discouraged. First of all, you need to understand for you to be in a certain uh, period, for you to be in a certain role for a long period of time, maybe you need to check yourself to see that something is not right. Are you positioning yourself in such a way that you are visible? If you are in a cocoon, people won't see you to recommend you. Okay, you need to put yourself out there. Go on LinkedIn, brush up your profile. Okay, have engagements with people, communicate with people. I can even tell you that some people will say, okay, I'm expected, I want to be promoted. And then when you ask for the basic thing, give me your CV. The CV is not, there's nowhere to be found, it's shabby. Okay, so first things first, you have to bring yourself out. You have to put yourself in a position where people would always remember you and want to recommend you for some things. Okay, you can't sit in a hole and feel discouraged. The world is not fair. Life is not fair. You have to go and take it. You don't have to wait till it is handed to you. You need to push yourself to get it. Okay, and then it's only when people see you and see the content that you have, that is when people can always remember you and say, okay, there's this guy I know. I feel this person will fit in this role. I feel this person would do well in so much role. And if you are in an environment or a manufacturing sector, like in the FMCG, maybe beverage, food, or cosmetics, whichever one you're in, and you feel like, okay, you are not getting, or you've been denied, or you're not getting that growth that you need, you could always explore somewhere else. You don't have to be in that same space or spot. You could explore somewhere else, try out other interviews, put yourself out there, build your content, and then so that when the opportunity presents itself, you are ready. Okay, so that's, I think that in a nutshell, that would be the basic advice. And communicate, learn how to speak well, because when that opportunity comes and they ask you one and you're like they're like, okay, this person is not ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very important to improve yourself, basically. Last question before we're done. I remember I just said last question, but I just remembered this. It's a question that I love to ask.
Okay.
What would you, if you have the opportunity to speak to a younger version of yourself before you get to this point, what is one thing that you would say to a younger Mavis?
One thing I would say to my younger self is don't worry too much, because my younger self would always worry. Don't worry too much. Things have a way of turning out good. Okay, things has a way of playing out the way you want it. You are in charge of where you want to be. You need to take charge. If you don't take charge of your life, if you don't tell yourself what you want and put sustainable goals or actions to drive you to that path that you want, you will not get it. Okay, I would also tell myself, my younger self now, like then, always being worried, getting burnt out. No, you need to invest more in yourself than other people. Okay, because there was a point in my life where I was always working or doing things to please other people, and it didn't matter if I my very self is not happy. So you need to make yourself happy. You need to find ways to love what you do in the difficult, in the even as difficult as it is. Find ways to love what you do, find ways to empower people and inspire people, and read. Because I started reading later. If I had read more, I would have not blown away some opportunities I had. Okay, and then of course the visibility is there. Later I started, working on being visible, putting myself out there. But then I would also tell myself, my younger self, you'll be fine, you'll be all right, and of last you'll be fine. And looking at how far I have come, I'm actually fine. And of course the sky is just the starting limit. Of course in some years I would also want to move from a current role to something bigger. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that is Mavis Ene.
Thank you.
And from us at the
Oh wow.
Career Network, we're giving you this
Aww,
for being our very, very distinguished
thank
guest.
you. This is so lovely. Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
we have this as well.
Thank you.
When you're leaving.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I didn't expect it. It's an honor to be here. I mean, it's really interesting to have this kind of engagement because you don't always get it often. Sometimes you can be so immersed in work. So I'm really grateful for being on this podcast, and the discussion has been intriguing and exciting. It's not always all that. It's not always all the time you get to talk about yourself, in the camera. So thank you so much. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And that's the story for today on the Career Network. I'm very sure you learned a thing or two. And until the next time, keep building and we'll see you on the inside. Bye, guys.